I still remember the day I learned what family loyalty really meant. Growing up in Minneapolis, my parents had always preached financial responsibility. They taught us to save, to work hard, to be independent. At least, that was what they told me. For my younger brother Jake, the rules always seemed different. I never thought much of it until 3 months ago when I discovered my parents had defended Jake's $40,000 debt, then tried to drain my account when I refused to bail them out. I had always been the responsible one, building my career as a software engineer in Boston, saving diligently, doing everything right. But apparently in my family, doing right meant being everybody's safety net. Before I tell you how I discovered my family's betrayal, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If my story resonates with you, hit the like button and subscribe to follow my journey toward standing up for myself. I grew up in a modest suburban home in Minneapolis with what I thought was a typical middle-class family. My father, Michael, worked as a high school history teacher, while my mother, Diana, was a dedicated nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they provided a stable home for me and my younger brother, Jake. From an early age, our parents emphasized the importance of education, hard work, and financial responsibility. Save for a rainy day, my father would always say. No one's going to take care of you but yourself. I took those lessons to heart, starting my first part-time job at 16 working weekends at the local grocery store while maintaining straight A's. Jake was different. 3 years younger than me, he was the social butterfly of the family. While I spent weekends studying or working, Jake was out with friends playing sports or attending parties. His grades were mediocre at best, but my parents always had explanations ready. Not everyone is academically inclined like you, Christopher, my mother would say, whenever I questioned why Jake never faced consequences for his poor grades. He has other talents. Those other talents never seemed to materialize into anything productive, but my parents continued making excuses for him. When Jake forgot to do his chores, they would do them for him. When he lost his phone for the 3rd time in a year, they bought him a new one without hesitation. I noticed these things, but didn't think much of them. He was the baby of the family after all. When college came around, our paths diverged even further. I had worked hard throughout high school and earned a partial scholarship to the University of Minnesota. Even with the scholarship, college was expensive, so I worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. I served coffee in the mornings, tutored in the afternoons, and worked tech support on weekends. I was determined to graduate with minimal debt. Jake, on the other hand, barely made it into community college. He enrolled half-heartedly, claiming he wanted to study business, though he rarely attended classes. While I was pulling all-nighters to maintain my GPA and working 30 hours a week, Jake was partying and playing video games. After 3 semesters, he dropped out. "College isn't for everyone," my father said during a family dinner when Jake announced his decision. "Jake is just finding himself." I bit my tongue, wondering when finding yourself became a legitimate career path. My parents continued supporting Jake financially, paying his rent, his car insurance, even his phone bill. They called it temporary assistance, but it never seemed to end. After graduating with my computer science degree and only $10,000 in student loans, I landed a job at a tech company in Boston. I moved across the country, eager to start my career and build my own life. Within 3 years, I had paid off my student loans, created a substantial emergency fund, and started investing in retirement accounts. I lived modestly below my means, sharing an apartment with roommates, even though I could afford to live alone. Despite the distance, I maintained a good relationship with my family. We had weekly video calls, and I flew back to Minnesota for major holidays. During these calls and visits, I noticed that Jake bounced from one retail job to another, frequently quitting or getting fired for trivial reasons, like disagreements with management or because the job was beneath his potential. Yet my parents never seemed concerned. They continued supporting him, calling each new job a stepping stone to something better. but that something better never materialized. Jake was approaching 30 and still living paycheck to paycheck when he was getting paychecks at all. The first major red flag appeared during our family vacation 3 months ago. We had rented a cabin by Lake Superior for a long weekend, our first family getaway in years. I flew in from Boston, excited to spend quality time with everyone. Jake arrived late, pulling up in a brand new luxury car that must have cost at least $40,000. "Nice car," I commented, as he unloaded his bags. "New job must be going well." Jake shrugged noncommittally. "Got a good deal." Later that evening, when Jake went for a walk, I asked my parents how he could afford such an expensive car on his retail salary. They exchanged glances before my father changed the subject, asking about my work in Boston. The next day, my mother pulled me aside. "You shouldn't judge your brother so harshly," she said. "Everyone has different priorities." "I am not judging him," I replied. "I am just concerned about his financial decisions." She patted my arm. "That is sweet, but Jake is an adult. He knows what he is doing." Something about her defensive tone made me uneasy, but I let it go. Family vacations were rare enough without causing tension. Throughout the weekend, I noticed other concerning signs. My parents, who had always been financially stable, seemed stressed about money. My father grimaced when paying the dinner bill at a modest restaurant. My mother mentioned having to pick up extra nursing shifts. When I asked if everything was okay financially, they assured me they were fine, just being cautious with retirement approaching in a few years. Before I left, my mother asked unusually detailed questions about my job salary and savings. At the time, I thought she was just showing interest in my life, but looking back, there was a calculating element to her questions that should have alarmed me. "That emergency fund sounds impressive," she said. "How much do you have saved now?" "And it is all easily accessible." I answered honestly, proud of my financial discipline. I had no idea I was giving her information she would later try to use against me. The betrayal began with a phone call. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday when my phone rang displaying my mother's name. Immediately concerned, I answered, fearing a health emergency. "Christopher," my mother's voice sounded strained, tearful. "I am sorry to call so late, but I need to talk to you about something important. What is wrong? Is everyone okay?" I asked, my heart racing. "We are all physically fine," she said, a distinction that immediately raised my suspicions. "But we are having some financial difficulties." "It is about Jake." Over the next 20 minutes, my mother revealed that Jake had accumulated over $40,000 in credit card debt. Apparently, his new car was just the tip of the iceberg. There had been gambling expensive gifts for a girlfriend I had never heard of, and what she vaguely described as lifestyle expenses. "We paid it off," my mother admitted. "Your father and I used some of our retirement savings and took out a home equity loan. We couldn't let Jake face bankruptcy at his age. It would ruin his future." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. My parents, in their late 50s, had jeopardized their retirement to bail out my brother's irresponsible spending. "Why are you telling me this now?" I finally asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well," my mother's voice turned hesitant, "we are struggling to rebuild our savings now. The loan payments are higher than we expected, and your father's school is cutting back his hours next year. We were hoping you might be able to help us out." Just a loan of $15,000 to get us through this rough patch. My mind reeled. $15,000 was a significant portion of my emergency fund money I had sacrificed and worked hard to save. "I need some time to think about this," I said carefully. "This is a lot to process." My mother sounded disappointed but said she understood. Before hanging up, she added, "Please don't mention this to Jake. He feels terrible already, and we don't want to make him feel worse." After the call, I couldn't sleep. Something about the situation didn't add up. Why would my financially cautious parents drain their retirement for Jake's debt? How had things gotten so bad without anyone telling me, and why the secrecy about discussing it with Jake? The next day, I called Jake directly. At first, he was evasive, echoing my mother's plea not to discuss the situation, but I persisted, and eventually, the truth trickled out. Look, it is not like this is the first time, Jake admitted reluctantly. Mom and Dad have helped me out before with smaller debts. How much smaller? I pressed. I don't know, a few thousand here and there over the years, but this time it got out of hand. I started gambling online thinking I could win back what I lost, but it just got worse. And the girlfriend, Jake sighed. Amanda. She has expensive tastes, and I wanted to impress her. Designer bags, weekend trips, that kind of thing. On a retail salary, I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. I maxed out credit cards, took out payday loans. He paused. I know it was stupid, okay? I am going to therapy now. I promised Mom and Dad this is the last time. I wanted to believe him, but his history suggested otherwise. Still, he was my brother, and he sounded genuinely remorseful. I told him I would consider helping our parents, but would need some guarantees about his future behavior. After talking with Jake, I began reviewing my recent conversations with my parents, with new suspicion. The detailed questions about my savings during our vacation took on a sinister tone. The casual inquiries about my bank and investment accounts during our weekly calls now seemed like reconnaissance. On a hunch, I logged into a joint account I had opened with my parents during college. We had used it for them to transfer money for tuition and expenses. Though I had my own accounts now, I had kept this one open with a small balance for emergencies. It had been months since I had checked it. What I found made my blood run cold. There were multiple withdrawal attempts in the past month, all for large amounts, all of which had been denied due to insufficient funds and security protocols that required my in-person authorization for large transactions. The attempted withdrawals had come from my parents' home location in Minneapolis. My hands shaking, I checked my email and found a message I had missed filtered to my spam folder. It was from my mother to my father, accidentally copied to my old college email address that was still linked to the account. Michael, the joint account with Christopher, didn't work. The bank said, "We need his signature for withdrawals over $500. Do you think we should tell him about our financial situation now, or wait until things get more desperate? He has always been generous, but $15,000 is a lot to ask for. Maybe we could borrow from his investment account instead." He mentioned it has no early withdrawal penalties. I read the email 3 times, my sense of betrayal deepening with each reading. They hadn't just asked for my help, they had attempted to take my money without my knowledge or consent. And from the sound of it, they had been planning this for some time. I immediately called my parents, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Did you try to withdraw money from our joint account without telling me?" I asked, without preamble, when my father answered. There was a telling pause before he responded. "Christopher, you need to understand the pressure we have been under," he said, his tone defensive. "It was just in case of emergency. We would have told you afterward." "That is called stealing, Dad," I said, barely containing my emotion. My mother got on the line, her voice tearful. "We were desperate to help Jake. You have so much saved up, and family needs to help family. You tried to take my money without asking," I repeated, still unable to believe their justification. "Money I worked for, sacrificed for. You have an obligation to help your family," my father's voice hardened. "After all we did for you, putting you through college." "I worked my way through college," I exploded. "I had 3 jobs, I paid for most of it myself." "Well, we raised you," my mother countered. "We gave you a home, food, clothes." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were acting as if fulfilling their basic parental responsibilities entitled them to my adult earnings. "I need some time," I said, finally unable to continue the conversation. "Please don't contact me for a while." I hung up my hands, still shaking, feeling as though the foundation of my family relationship had just crumbled beneath my feet. The weekend after discovering my parents' betrayal was one of the darkest periods of my life. I barely slept, cycling through emotions like a carnival ride I couldn't exit. anger at my parents' deception, hurt that they saw me as a resource rather than a son, confusion about how the family I thought I knew could do something so fundamentally wrong, and yes, guilt even as I tried to reason myself out of it. Was I truly being selfish? Did I owe my family this money simply because we shared DNA? By Sunday evening, I couldn't bear the emotional spiral alone any longer. I called my best friend Taylor, who lived a few blocks away in Boston. Taylor had known me since college and had heard plenty about my family dynamics over the years. "Come over," Taylor said immediately upon hearing the tremor in my voice. "I will order pizza. This sounds like a pizza-level crisis." Sitting in Taylor's apartment, the familiar comfort of our friendship provided the first sense of safety I had felt in days. I explained everything from Jake's debt to my parents' attempted withdrawal to their justifications. "That is seriously messed up," Taylor said when I finished. "They tried to steal from you, Chris. There is no sugarcoating that." "But they are family," I said, voicing the thought that had been tormenting me. "Don't I have some obligation to help them?" Taylor leaned forward. "There is a difference between helping family and enabling destructive behavior. They are not asking for help with medical bills, or because they lost their jobs through no fault of their own. They are asking you to fund your brother's gambling and your parents' enabling of it." Put that way, it seemed clearer. Taylor helped me see the pattern I had been blind to my entire life. My parents had always enabled Jake's irresponsibility, creating a cycle where he never faced consequences for his actions. And now they were trying to drag me into that cycle, making me the new enabler as their resources dwindled. "You are not responsible for fixing their mistakes," Taylor said, "and you definitely don't owe them access to your bank accounts." That conversation was the first step toward clarity, but the situation was about to escalate further. Monday evening, Jake called me. His tone was immediately confrontational. "What the hell, Christopher? Mom's been crying for 2 days because you refused to help the family." "I didn't refuse to help. I defended myself. I found out you all tried to take money from my account without asking me." "It is just money," Jake shot back. "You have plenty of it. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad might lose their house because of me. Does that make you feel good? Knowing you could help, but won't?" The manipulation was so transparent, it almost took my breath away. "This isn't about me feeling good or bad, Jake. This is about boundaries and honesty." "Oh, get off your high horse," he snapped. "We're talking about Mom and Dad's retirement. They're considering taking out a second mortgage now because you are being so stingy with your extra money." That revelation hit me like a physical blow. A second mortgage. After already using their retirement savings and taking out a home equity loan, the situation was even worse than I had thought. "Jake, this has to stop," I said firmly. "They cannot keep sacrificing their future for your mistakes, and I cannot be the solution to this problem. You know what? You have always been selfish." Jake's voice turned venomous. "All you care about is your precious career and your precious money. The rest of us are a family supporting each other. You are just an outsider who happens to share our last name." He hung up before I could respond, leaving me shaken but increasingly certain I needed to stand my ground. 2 days later, my parents called for what they termed a family meeting via video chat. Their faces appeared serious on my screen, and Jake sat sullenly in the background of their living room. "Christopher," my father began, "formally, we have given this a lot of thought. We understand you feel uncomfortable about helping Jake directly, so we have another proposal." My mother jumped in, her voice gentle, but with an underlying firmness I rarely heard from her. "We want to create a family fund for emergencies. We are asking you to contribute $20,000 to this fund." The amount had increased from their original request. I remained silent as they continued. "This would be administered by your father and me," my mother explained. "It would be used for genuine family emergencies. Like Jake's gambling debts, I couldn't help asking." My father's face hardened. "That is unfair, Christopher. Your brother has a problem, yes, but he is getting help. This fund would be for all of us." I knew better. This family fund was just another way to access my money for Jake's ongoing problems. What happens if I say no to this fund? I asked, already suspecting the answer. My parents exchanged glances. Then we would have to reconsider what family means to all of us, my father said slowly. Family supports each other, Christopher. If you cannot do that, perhaps you do not value this family as much as we thought. There it was, the ultimatum. Contribute to their fund or be excluded from the family. Pay up or be cut off emotionally. After all we have done for you, my father added, his voice rising, this is how you repay us, by abandoning us when we need you most. Something snapped inside me at those words. All the guilt, all the confusion, all the hurt crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. My money isn't your safety net, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion behind it. I worked for every dollar in my accounts. I sacrificed, I saved, I made responsible choices. I am not going to throw that away to enable behavior that is hurting all of you. My mother gasped. My father's face flushed red. Jake smirked in the background. I will help Jake, but not with cash, I continued. I will pay for financial counseling. I will help him create a budget. I will support his recovery from gambling, but I will not give him or you money that will perpetuate this cycle. How dare you lecture us about parenting? My father started, but I cut him off. I am closing our joint account tomorrow. I am freezing my credit and implementing security measures on all my accounts. I am taking these steps not because I do not love you, but because I do. This situation is destroying our family, and I won't contribute to it anymore. The screen exploded with reactions. My mother crying, my father shouting about ingratitude, Jake calling me names. I listened for a moment, then quietly ended the call, feeling both terrible and oddly liberated. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family's unhealthy dynamics. It felt awful, but it also felt right. The weeks following my confrontation with my family were some of the most difficult of my life. True to my word, I closed our joint account and implemented strict security measures on all my financial accounts. I received a barrage of messages from my parents and Jake, ranging from anger to guilt-tripping to tearful pleas. How could you abandon your family? My mother texted. You think you are so much better than us, Jake wrote. No son of mine would act this way, my father declared. Each message hurt, but I stood firm. I had drawn a boundary, and I knew it was the right thing to do, not just for me, but for all of us in the long run. Still, the emotional toll was heavy. I found myself unable to concentrate at work, losing sleep, questioning my decision in dark moments of the night. Recognizing I needed support, I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Sharma helped me process the complex emotions I was experiencing, the grief of family estrangement, and the guilt that still occasionally surfaced, despite my logical understanding of the situation. Family systems often resist change, she explained during one session. When you change the role they had assigned you, the entire system felt threatened. Their reaction is about preserving the status quo, not about you personally. Those insights helped, but the hardest part was the loneliness. With my family effectively cutting me off, I realized how much of my social and emotional life had been tied to them, despite living across the country. To fill that void, I began strengthening connections with friends in Boston. Taylor introduced me to a hiking group. I joined a community volunteer organization. Slowly, I built a chosen family around me, people who respected my boundaries and valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I also became much more conscious about financial boundaries in all my relationships. I learned to say no without guilt, to be generous without being taken advantage of, to discuss money openly and honestly with friends before conflicts could arise. 6 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected call from Jake. His voice sounded different, subdued. I hit rock bottom, he said, without preamble. Mom and Dad cannot help anymore. They are barely making mortgage payments. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. That financial counseling you offered, he said reluctantly, is that still on the table? It was the first step toward healing. I arranged for Jake to work with a financial counselor who specialized in gambling addiction recovery. I paid for the sessions directly, never giving cash to Jake himself. At first, he was resistant, but as weeks passed, he began to engage with the process. I never realized how much damage I was doing, he admitted during a call 3 months into his counseling. Not just to myself, but to Mom and Dad. To you. It was the first genuine acknowledgement I had heard from him about the impact of his behavior. It wasn't a full apology, but it was progress. My parents took longer to come around. The turning point came when their financial advisor bluntly told them they were on track to outlive their money at their current rate of spending. They couldn't afford to keep bailing out Jake, and they finally realized it. My mother called me 8 months after our confrontation. Her voice was hesitant, lacking the emotional manipulation that had characterized our recent interactions. "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking," she said. "We met with a family therapist, actually. She helped us see some patterns we had not recognized." I held my breath, hardly daring to hope for real change. "We enabled Jake for years," she continued, "and we tried to manipulate you. We are truly sorry, Christopher. We would like to try to rebuild our relationship if you are willing, on your terms. It wasn't an instant fix. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But over the next few months, we established a new kind of relationship, one with clear boundaries, honest communication, and mutual respect. We began with short calls, factual updates about our lives. Gradually, warmth returned to our conversations, but the dynamics had fundamentally changed. A year after the confrontation, I flew back to Minneapolis for Thanksgiving. It was my first time seeing my family in person since drawing my boundary. I was nervous, but also hopeful. Jake met me at the airport. He looked different, more grounded somehow. He had been working steadily at the same job for 6 months, a personal record. He was following a debt repayment plan and had been gambling free for over 9 months. "I never thanked you properly," he said, as we drove to our parents' house, "for not giving me the money, for offering real help instead. It was what I needed, not what I wanted." At home, my parents embraced me with genuine warmth. The house looked different, more modest somehow. They had sold many luxury items to help pay down their debts. My father was working part-time, even though he had officially retired, rebuilding their financial security. During dinner, my mother reached for my hand. "We are so proud of you, Christopher," she said, "not just for your success, but for your strength. You stood up to all of us when we were wrong. That took real courage." My father nodded agreement. "You helped us all by refusing to participate in our dysfunction." It was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. The relationship we rebuilt wasn't the same as before, and that was okay. It was healthier, more authentic. The experience changed me too. I became more confident in setting boundaries in all areas of my life. I started a financial literacy blog, helping others recognize and avoid financial manipulation. The most profound lesson I learned wasn't about money at all. It was about self-respect. About recognizing that true love, whether in families or friendships, never demands self-destruction. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is say no, even when every emotional instinct screams at you to give in. I now know that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It is essential. My boundary protected not just my finances, but ultimately my entire family from continuing down a destructive path. The hardest lesson wasn't learning to say no to my family. It was realizing that by doing so, I was finally saying yes to myself. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family over money or other issues? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story helped you recognize unhealthy financial dynamics in your own relationships, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about personal growth and setting healthy boundaries. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this story, share it with them. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes loving someone means having the courage to say no.